Welcome to our special Embracing Hope, Strengthening Mental Resilience on World Suicide Prevention Day. If this happens to be the very first time that you're meeting me, my name is Kelli Melissa Reinhardt. I am the founder of BCC Evolution, which is a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit. I am also the host of Make Mental Health Matter show, which airs right here on E360 TV on the Achieve TV channel. I am really excited. This happens to actually be the first summit that I'm doing on E360 TV, and I'm very excited to share the speakers that I have today. My story really begins with the loss of my sister to a completed suicide in 2017. It was on February 20th. My sister's name was Carrie, and I just knew that I wanted to make a difference in this thing that we call life. But I didn't know exactly how I was going to do that. And I really got into the nonprofit space because I really wanted to help in the suicide prevention. But over time, and with a lot of different certificates that I've gained, information, tools, and resources, I really shifted our focus into mental health. What I have found is that a mental health challenge is generally what leads people to complete the act of suicide. That can be depression, anxiety, substance abuse, the feelings of feeling very alone, hopeless. Somebody could feel like they're a burden. And in the past, I've always thought that taking your life was very selfish. That was the thing that I said, is that if anybody ever completed suicide, that I would never go to their funeral. Well, little did I know that somebody in my family was going to. And so it just wasn't the thing, right? I'm not going to not go to my sister's funeral or celebration of life as we had. But I've really started delving into research and finding out more because I wasn't educated. I didn't know how to help her. I didn't know what to say, what to do, what signs or symptoms to be listening for or watching out for. And so over time, I've gained all these tools, all these resources and information, and that's what I give back through my nonprofit. Why am I telling you all of this? Because today is World Suicide Prevention Day. There are nearly 800,000 people each year that complete suicide. And you may notice that I'm utilizing the words complete because in the mental health space, we're really trying to break down this stigma and change the verbiage versus using committed. So using completed or died by. And this is what we do within my nonprofit, is have these conversations that nobody else seems to want to have, but they're really important conversations. And that's why I have brought together some really incredible speakers for today to share their experience, give you information and tools, and really give you that understanding of how we can really strengthen our resilience as a human. Most people forget as they get older that we are born with resilience. You remember when you were little, probably not this young, but when you were little, you learned how to crawl, you learned how to walk. You fell down, you got right back up. You fell down, you got right back up. That is the true meaning of resilience. And throughout time, as we get older, sometimes we forget that that is innate in us. So, how can we rebuild or rediscover this resilience within ourselves and therefore being able to give back to everyone else that might be around us? So, I am again really excited for all the speakers that are coming on today. You'll hear me pop in here and there, giving you a little bit more information, but for most of the part, I just get to be your host. And that is really exciting for me because generally I talk the most. So this time, I don't necessarily have to. We have 5 speakers this evening that, again, I will give you information or their bio before they happen to come on. You'll listen to them and their stories, and then I'll share with you how you can find them. If this again is the first time that you're watching on E360 TV, make sure you add into your favorites list or go check out at one point in time the Make Mental Health Matter show, because on that show, I bring a whole bunch of amazing guests there too. So, without further ado, I am going to tell you the information on our first speaker. So, Jody Jensen. Growing up, Jody dreamed of single-handedly achieving world peace. She studied international development and conducted fieldwork to relieve poverty in Africa, Oceania, Europe, and the United States. But as she examined the effects of nonprofit interventions, she saw little, if any, lasting change. Jody realized a simple truth: you can't solve a problem you don't understand. While raising her 5 children and inspired by her international work, Jody committed herself to the study of emotional intelligence and empathy. Today, she is a recognized expert in applied empathy, is a certified emotional intelligence coach, and has a mission to help leaders and organizations discover and apply empathy to solve problems. Super excited to hear her. And without further ado, Jody, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really happy to be here as well. This is a really intense topic, and I recognize that. So thank you for your platform, and thank you for all that you do for our society and for the mental health community. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So I recognize that this summit probably brings together people from all different walks of life. Right. As I imagine people who are sitting there on their couches or in front of their computers watching tonight, you have a wide variety of backgrounds, but there's one thing that brings us all here together. And that is that we've all been touched by this topic of mental health awareness and suicide awareness and prevention on a personal level. I imagine that each one of you has experienced some sort of heartbreak or trauma in your life. You've seen pain, and that pain can sometimes rear up its ugly head and bring on panic attacks. It can be unexpected. And I also see you as people who want to create lasting change in the world. You want to create a world where people feel safe to talk openly about what they're struggling with. And I see you as those change advocates. So I feel privileged and honored to be here tonight. I want to share a bit of my story, but I want to preface it with the fact that my story is not unique. We all have stories, and we all have stories that can fill volumes and volumes of books of people that you have cared about who have suffered, and perhaps even people that you've cared about who have died by suicide. And I just want you to know that I see you. This is a very sensitive and triggering topic. Actually, today falls on the day after the anniversary of some really terrible news that my husband and I received. September 9th, 2022. We received a phone call informing us that my husband's best friend, lifelong best friend, had not only died by suicide, but he had also taken his wife and kids with him. And the moment that I heard those words, I I first of all it didn't register. It couldn't possibly be true because that doesn't happen. That kind of thing does not happen. I want to spare you a lot of the details surrounding this because frankly, these are not my details to share with you, but I want to share with you what I've learned over the past year as I personally have worked through this trauma and as I've seen my family members and dear, dear friends work through their trauma as well. We have all experienced many sleepless nights filled with very difficult, unanswerable questions. We've had lots of panic attacks that are triggered by unexpected things. For me, it would be a smell or a sound or being in a certain place or hearing somebody's name. It can come from anywhere. To add to this heartbreak that we experienced, it actually created a perfect storm for a lot of online trolls to center their political debates around this family. And so there were a lot of attacks, especially directed at his parents. And they are dear, good people who didn't deserve that. And what I saw through this was how crucial the topic of empathy is and how we, for some reason, don't understand it in our society. But here's the thing about empathy. I got this quote from Mimi Nicklin. She is an empathy advocate, and she said recently, quote, "Empathy is a pro-evolutionary skill set that we were all born with. This is pro-human, okay? It exists to allow us to survive in the world because as human beings, we cannot exist alone." Okay, so this is not just talking about thriving in society. This is talking about our actual survival. So it's important for us to understand this topic of empathy. So psychologists define empathy like this. This is from Martin Hoffman. He's a psychologist. And he says that empathy is the cognitive awareness of another person's internal states. That is his thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and intentions. That's part one of empathy. Part two of empathy is the vicarious affective response, that's like an emotional response, to another person. One empathizes to the extent that one's feelings matches the other's excuse me, feelings. He went on to say, "To me, empathy is the spark of human concern, the glue that makes social life possible." Okay, so it's important for us to learn to understand other people's perspectives and figure out how to care also about those perspectives. And those are two important aspects that are really the glue that bring our society together. And without those things, we are doomed to failure as a society, okay? So I know that we've talked a lot about empathy throughout our lives. We know that it's something that we should try and work on, but I don't know that a lot of us really know how to do it. So over the past year, as I've been scrutinizing this topic of empathy in light of the suicide and homicide that took place in September of last year, I developed a model that's a 5-step process that can walk us through how to empathize with someone who has recently experienced loss in a difficult, tragic way like this. To be honest, this model is a model for empathy that works across the board, but I want to gear it specifically today toward when we are introduced to information about a suicide or a tragic event like this, okay? So this model, this 5-step process is kind of symbolized by a hot air balloon ride, okay? So if you can imagine, you go to a hot air balloon festival and they all roll out the big balloons, they have the baskets there attached and they start to fill it up with hot air, okay? Once it is, the balloon is above the basket, the pilot gets in and his passengers and they make sure that it's tethered down so it doesn't float away before they're ready, okay? Before they untether the balloon, it kind of starts to hover above the ground. It's kind of suspended a little bit above the ground. And what the pilot does at that point is he fixes his eyes on the closest obstacle that he might run into. So that might be another balloon around them, or it might be power lines or trees. Okay, so he fixes his eyes on the obstacle And then they untether the balloon and they launch into the sky. And meanwhile, he keeps his eyes on the obstacle. And they go up in the sky, they have a wonderful voyage. All the while, they're keeping constant communication with their ground crew via CB radio. And when it's time for their hot air balloon trip to come to an end, the ground crew works together with those in the basket to successfully bring the balloon back down to Earth. Okay, so that's just a little visualization for you. And this 5-step process that I mentioned actually has an acronym that is a bit nonsensical. It happens to be SMURF. That means nothing, but if it helps you to remember how this process works, just imagine that you and Smurfette or Papa Smurf, choose your favorite Smurf, are going on a hot air balloon ride together. Okay, so I know nonsensical mnemonics can be very helpful when you're trying to memorize something. So the 5 steps are: number 1, suspend judgment. Number 2, monitor your lens. Number 3 is untether. Number 4 is reflect back what you understand. And number 5 is find your footing. Okay, and if you can think through that, those spell out the word Smurf. And it kind of walks you through that process of the hot air balloon ride. So I will talk you through each one of those individually. So number 1 is to suspend judgment. This is symbolized by that moment before the balloon rises off the ground. Well, it's starting to rise above the ground, but it's still tethered down, okay? So we all have a natural tendency as humans to otherize or dehumanize or in some ways demonize other people that we don't understand who are somehow different from us. There's a quote from David Livingstone Smith in a book called Less Than Human. He said, quote, "We are all potential dehumanizers, just as we are all potential objects of dehumanization." And I found a study by Janine Willis in 2006 that showed that humans have a tendency to make really fast judgment calls about people. So they showed people just different images of individuals of all different ethnic backgrounds, and they, some had skulls on their faces, some were smiling. It didn't matter. But what they found is that people, it only took them 100 milliseconds. What is that? A tenth of a second to make a lasting opinion about that person. And it was consistent with the opinions that they would form about people if they were given more time. So we have this tendency to jump to conclusions about people. We don't take time to get to know them. We don't take the time to try and understand their perspective. Instead, I want to propose that along with, the book Crucial Conversations, where they talk about a path to action, I want to propose that we create some space and allow space for different conclusions to come to. I'll talk through that path to action really quick. So what happens in our life, we have something that happens around us, okay? So we see something, we hear something, we feel something, and so there's a stimulus, right, that comes in. And then there's this brief split second where we tell ourselves a story about what we just saw, read, or heard, and we form an interpretation about that. And that is where the damage comes in. We start to feel emotions about that story that we told ourselves, and then we act on those emotions. So it's not just that something happens and then we act. We tell ourselves a story about why somebody did what they did, and then we feel an emotion about that. And that's when we take action. So those online trolls that I told you about before, they read a story in the newspaper. They told themselves a story about what had happened. They felt a strong emotion, and it's understandable to feel strong emotions about a story like that. They took action by posting their comments online about how strongly they felt about it. Okay, so just allowing a moment is so important. That moment before the balloon takes off, just suspend for a second. Don't judge, just be, just for a second. Okay, step 2, monitor your lens. This is symbolized by that moment when the pilot fixes his eyes on the obstacles ahead of him. Each one of us has a very unique lens that we bring to the world, right? This comes from our educational background, our family background, our religion, our social experiences, our media consumption, our political views, and for a lot of us, our own traumas that are triggered when we see things that happen around us. So recognizing that each one of us has a unique pair of glasses that we see the world through is very important as we interact with other people. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I think that's important. So we're not just looking through that lens and just allowing it to be. We're going to take a good look at the lens itself for a moment here. Many of us come from a background of some sort of trauma. So for us and for many of those with whom we interact, trauma is a very real part of our existence in one form or another. You might be familiar with ink blot tests that are done, that are used by psychiatrists to kind of psychoanalyze people. Bessel van der Kolk is a psychiatrist who wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And he talks about veterans of the Vietnam War who were shown these Rorschach tests or the ink blot tests. And he found that those who had experienced trauma, they superimposed their trauma on everything that they saw. I'm going to read a quote from him. He said, traumatized people have a tendency to superimpose their trauma on everything around them and have trouble deciphering whatever is going on around them. And so it's just important for us to recognize that we each have a different lens, and that comes from the wiring of our brain. Our brains are wired by the experiences and the repeating thought patterns that we have that create this lens through which we see the world. And it's pretty amazing that nobody else has your unique lens. That's pretty cool. At the same time, it is a bit dangerous if we assume that other people should see things from our perspective. Okay, step 3 is untethering. So this is the moment when they lift off, keeping in mind that the coyote is still watching those obstacles as he goes past them, but we're untethering and we're able to freely float. Okay, so I love this concept of untethering. So it's something that happens to each of us when we read a really good novel or we see a movie in the movie theater and we're really fully caught up in what's going on. So this is untethering. Jamil Zaki is a psychologist at Stanford University, and he talks about this concept of untethering. He says, quote, you unstick yourself from time. You're sitting on a couch or at a desk, but your mind untethers like a balloon floating to wherever and whenever you imagine. These mental voyages drag your senses along for the ride. So what I hope that we can do when we are approaching another person, let's say you have a friend who just lost a child to suicide, I would hope that we would approach that situation with radical curiosity. So not just being slightly curious, but I'm calling it radical curiosity. You want to know the ins and outs of the way that they see the world. You want to let go of your reality. So your reality is represented by the ground, right? You're up in a hot air balloon and you are soaring through their reality for just a few minutes. Chris Voss, he's a former FBI hostage negotiator and author of the book, Never Split the Difference. He said, quote, empathy has a physical basis. When we closely observe a person's face, gestures, and tone of voice, our brain begins to align with theirs in a process called neural resonance. And the American Psychological Association says that this is due to something in our brain called mirror neurons. These are a type of brain cell that responds equally when we perform a task to when we see somebody else perform a task. So we can find this neural resonance when we allow ourselves to fully immerse ourselves in their experience. A friend of mine, when I was talking to him about this topic, his name is Michael Ye, and he's the former executive director of Trauma Informed Utah. That's a nonprofit here in Utah. He told me, quote, instead of wondering what's wrong with them, train yourself to wonder what happened to them. And I would submit that we should find out. We should be curious about what happened and what caused someone else to see the world from the way that they see it. So this allows us to bring compassion to the interaction. It's not just about me, and it's not just about you being different from me. It's about me just letting go of me for a few minutes and just fully launching myself into your world. Okay, the next step is to reflect back to them. This is akin to that communicating through the CB radio. Okay, so first of all, they need to make sure they are on the right frequency. One will say 410, the other one says 10-4, just to make sure that they're on the right page with each other. It's not just about you understanding the other person's perspective. It's also about making sure that they feel understood. Those are two separate things. I found myself understanding other people and not telling them, and they still feel disconnected from me. Chris Boss, who I mentioned earlier, he also said, quote, we should say, it sounds like, instead of I'm hearing that. The word I gets people's guard up. When I say I, it says I'm more interested in myself than the other person. But when you use the phrase, when you phrase the label as a neutral statement of understanding, it encourages your counterpart to be responsive. So allow them to correct you if you misunderstand where they're coming from. This allows a safe place where the person can open up more to you. Okay, the last step, I know I'm almost out of time here, but it's important for us to find our footing. This is symbolized by that moment when they bring the balloon back down to earth. This is the thing that I have struggled with the most over the past year, because I opened myself up 100% to feel what everybody was feeling. I felt what the online trolls felt. I felt what my friends' parents felt. I felt what their siblings were feeling and all of their neighbors. I felt it all, and I felt like a hot air balloon in a windstorm. I was in a hurricane and I couldn't find my center. And so I spent a lot of time doing grounding exercises to bring me back to myself, to bring me back to my reality. I think it's important to have a team of people who help you find your footing, just like that ground crew. They help them come back down. This can be your friends and family. This can be a therapist, and that's okay. I think too many of us grew up with the stigma that therapy is for people who are weak and who need help. But guess what? Every single one of us needs therapy, and I'm going to leave it at that. To summarize, I just want us to understand that when we go on this hot air balloon ride into somebody else's reality, not only do we understand them more effectively, but we strengthen those bonds that keep our society together and keep us focused and make us stronger. Because as that quote said at the beginning that I shared, if we don't have empathy, we risk our very survival as a species. And I know how important that this is. I know that if we use empathy, we will be able to strengthen each other and also strengthen ourselves in the process. Thank you so much for having me on, Kelly. This has been such a pleasure.
I gotta unmute my mic. See, thank you so much, Jody. That was amazing. And I want to just shout out, because if you are watching this, all of our speakers have little freebies that they're giving away. So if you go to, it is right here, bccevolution.org/embracing/hope. You can find Jody's freebie there too. And if they want to follow along or possibly work with you, where can they find you, Jody?
The best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn. It's just Jody, Jodie, Jensen, Jensen. I'm also on Facebook. You can find me with that same name, or you can join my Facebook group, which is Raising Emotionally Intelligent Kids.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jody. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right. That was amazing. One thing that I love that she said was that radical curiosity. I love that phrase, and I'm totally going to use it. So thank you, Jody, for that phrase. And I want to just quickly, this summit is being sponsored by Dusty DeGroff at Edward Jones, Denver, Colorado. So if you want a financial advisor who puts you first, then definitely call Dusty. And I'm going to throw up, it's this way, that way, a QR code right here where you can reach Dusty. So take a quick screenshot, and or this is his LinkedIn page where you can find him. So thank you, Dusty, for sponsoring this summit today. All right, on to the next speaker. So our next speaker is Gabriella Perante. I might have said that wrong. I'm sorry if I did. But as an international keynote speaker and high performance executive coach, Gabriella's unique ability to connect with people on an emotional level allows her to resonate with both small groups and large audiences. Her impressive repertoire includes authoring 2 human resource books published by McGraw-Hill and translated into multiple languages, as well as serving as LinkedIn learning instructor since 2017. Her leadership and HR programs have positively impacted nearly 1 million learners worldwide, earning her recognition as an expert in the fields of leadership, diversity, and HR by LinkedIn. Gabriella's mission is clear: to help individuals and organizations unlock their leadership potential, increase resilience, drive meaningful change in both business and life. She empowers teams to create cultures that foster growth and community, offering practical and actionable strategies that deliver tangible results. After all, when your team thrives, so does your organization. So without further ado, I am going to bring up Gabriella. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. What an amazing day and what an amazing experience to be here with you all today. Thank you so much for the presentation on empathy. What a great way to kick off our talk today. So thank you for introducing me. That sounds great and it's wonderful, but the truth is, I am really just a small town girl. I grew up in a town of 216 people. I just double checked to make sure that's how many people were actually in the town. And when I was asked today to speak to you all, I thought I could have this well planned out speech for you. But really, I thought I would just talk to you today about my struggles and some of the things that I've been through and some things that I have found that have been really, really helpful to help lots of people that I've shared. So given that, as a child growing up in such a small little town on a farm, I didn't go to preschool, didn't start school till later. Definitely had my moments of childhood struggles and trauma. At one point, I remember thinking to myself, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to have a next breath. And so I suffered from severe childhood illness, and I wasn't even sure at that point as a child if I was going to make it to be an adult through some of the challenges that I experienced. But I was able to kind of get here today with you. All the things that Kelly said are true, but not without struggle. And so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about really strengthening your mental fortitude and how do we move forward, right? And so there's a theory out there, more than a theory. They've studied that 52% of people who've actually experienced a traumatic event go through something that's called post-traumatic growth. So this was done by a psychologist named Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. And they said that some people, not just some, 52% of people who experience hardship in their lives actually can have more growth out of it. They can actually end up better. They can thrive through that, right? And so this piece has caught my eye. Why does this happen? You think when you go through hard things, you just bear down, grit your teeth, you try to get through it, but that doesn't happen for everybody, right? But it does. It happens for 52% of people. And these are things that we can all do. We can do this after we hear this today. We can start working on it. And I am going to challenge you in our time together to actually start that challenge today, because guess what? More things are going to come. After we just got finished with such a trying time during the COVID pandemic, we are here to go through a little bit more of that, sounds like, coming up. And if you haven't experienced adversity in your life, you may experience that. That may come, that day may come. And someone said that to me once when I was in my early 20s and I was just married and I just had a baby and everything was wonderful. And they said, if you haven't gone through hardships, Just wait. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. Like, my life is great. That can't happen. And what do you know? A couple years later, I'm going through a divorce, single mom, all the things, right? Mental health challenges all the way through that. So, what are the things that we can do right now? 5 simple steps. And I want to go through these really quickly with you. All right, Kelly, can we go to the next slide? There we go. Okay. So we talked about that. So the first one is this extreme gratitude for life. And I'm sure you've heard many, many times, do a gratitude journal. Get out your journal, do a gratitude journal. But really, it's one of the only things that has been correlated with this idea of resilience and happiness, that it comes out in so many different studies. So it's one of those things, if you're a scientific person, this is the one that you should do, right? It's been studied the most. So, and I don't mean just a little bit of gratitude, but I'm talking about extreme gratitude for life. So everything that happened to me bad was for my own good. I now appreciate all those people that came with that, right? I appreciate life in a way that I didn't before. So psychologists are actually looking for these 5 things to see if you're going to be in that group who actually experiences post-traumatic growth, right? Again, half the population can get there, and I think that we could honestly all get there, because these are things that you can do today, you can do this week, you can do this month, that can actually help you. So my challenge to you with extreme gratitude for life is, this is what you're going to do when you're in the worst possible moment in the next couple of weeks. Get out your phone, get out a piece of paper. You are going to write down 5 things that you're grateful for. And there may be some days that you have nothing to be grateful for. You're going to say, life sucks right now. Nothing is going right. Have you been there? I have. Where I can't even think of one thing to put on the gratitude list. But what happens when you slowly let the anxiety come down, you can find something that you're grateful for. And it could be as simple as, I'm grateful for this bed that I get to sleep in a warm house, right? Those are things you can put on your list. I'm grateful that I actually do live in a house, because some people in this world don't even have that opportunity, right? So 5 things in your worst moment. You change it, you got an assignment. You got 5 things to write down, okay? What you're grateful for. And that's going to start you on a journey of gratitude, right? The second thing that psychologists look for is enhanced relationships with others. And so this is something that you probably all are aware of, is I should have more friends. I should have more of a community. And this is hard nowadays. We move away from our family and friends. We move countries to have new jobs, to go to school, all the things, right? So it's so hard to connect with somebody, and it's hard to connect with somebody possibly online or someone that you've never met. But this is the world that we live in, and I would say take advantage of that. So if you feel lonely today, there are people that want to connect with you. If you don't have anyone to connect with, I guarantee you there is somebody that wants to connect with you. So use technology to your advantage. Use LinkedIn, use Facebook, use meetup groups. There's somebody out there who does want to do life with you, to hear what you have to say, right? This can go too for professional coaches, for professional counselors. I wouldn't have made it through to where I am if I didn't have mental health coaching and counseling. Then the feeling of possibilities everywhere. So this is something that they're looking for. If this person does experience possibilities, so they've experienced something traumatic, they've been through adversity, just been through COVID, they went through this horrible pandemic, they know people that have passed away, they know people who have committed suicide, they know that this is happening. But in spite of that, there's feelings of possibility. So just one little thing, one little possibility is how you start this. Is there a possibility of change? And that's what they're looking for. And then a show of personal strength, right? So during this, we talk about, what I talk about with people all around the world is, what are we actually naturally gifted at? What do we know how to do so well, but we just don't get a chance to do that? So how do those things show up, right? If we are really, really looking at ourselves and showing strength in ourselves, that's what they're looking for, to see if you have that, you might be in that group, right? Again, I think 100% is achievable. And the last one is a significant spiritual change. Okay. So don't get me wrong on this. This is not about religion. This is not about politics. This is just, you've experienced a change, right? And it doesn't have to be that you join any particular church or anything like that, but you think differently about spirituality, about potentially even religion. And that's something that they're also looking for. And there's no set way. There's no set way to do that. Okay. It's just whatever works for you. Okay. So those are the 5 things again that they're looking for, um, to see if you have experienced post-traumatic growth. All right. Let's see. So I do want to point out one thing too. We talk about resilience a lot. And when we talk about it, I think sometimes the narrative gets lost. And that if you just grit your teeth, and literally the word grit, right? We hear that a lot. Just get through it. Just muscle through it. Just get through the mental illness. Just get through it. You're tough enough. And the reality is that mental illness can be a very severe illness in our life. And what Kelly mentioned can lead to suicide. And so having the tools in place, having mental health therapists, having coaches, having that community around you is going to be the most important thing that you can do for yourself today. And that's something that you can do today, right? You can find those people today. You have many of us on this call today that are here, that want to help, right? So I also want to point out that resilience is often talked about as a way that, I want to be careful how I say this. It's talked about in a way that everyone should be able to do it, right? And I did just say, I think 100% of people could go into that post traumatic growth. But I want to be very, very clear. And there may be somebody out there today who's listening to this. And I want you to know that there is some trauma in life, okay, that is so bad, that's so horrific, that the very act of getting out of bed each day is a heroic act. It is a sign of resilience, and that's all you have to do that day. What is the next best step for you? That's all you need to do. And so sometimes we can just get so caught up in I have to be resilient and I need to move forward and I have to get better. But there are some things like the loss of a child or other horrific things that do happen in the world. And if that's you out there, I'm so, so very sorry. And I want you to know that you're so brave, and you getting up and you putting your pants on every day, and maybe it's just sweatpants, but you did that, and that's enough, and that is resilient. Okay. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Some resources that I think that you can get. I really love this website called Bad Bitches Have Bad Days Too, mental health website to really help you on your way. And it's super fun too. So thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate it. Oh, I can't hear you, Kelly.
I muted myself again. Changing screens all around, but thank you so much. That was awesome. And I just really appreciate you being on today. So I would love for you to share, where can people find you if they want to follow along, or yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. That's my website there. I do individual and group coaching and consulting and trainings. Really love working with people. I want to make the world a better place, and I try to be one person at a time. That's my number. That's my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. That was awesome. I was kind of switching screens around, and then I keep forgetting to unmute myself, which never really happens, but I'm normally always talking. So, I am so glad that we have our speakers today and really shaking it up, thinking about things in different perspectives, especially as we talk about these challenging topics. It's not every day that people sit around and say, hey, I want to talk about suicide prevention, and I want to talk about all the things that nobody else wants to talk about. I do that on a daily basis, but I am in the space to be doing that. So I appreciate you watching and tuning in today. Again, we have 5 total speakers. We are going to go to a quick sponsored break, and then I will bring back our next speakers. But if you happen to be watching this, whether it is on the Facebook page, the Make Mental Health Matter Facebook show page, You might be watching it on YouTube, or you may be streaming it on E360, Roku, Apple Fire, Amazon, whichever one it happens to be. Make sure that you add this to your favorites list or your watch list or your watch later list, whatever you call it. And one of the cool parts is we are live. We are actually live. So if you have any questions, comments that happen to come up about anything that one of the speakers is speaking about, throw it into the comments, and they actually end up popping up on my side, and I can either answer the questions for you or I can ask them to the actual speakers themselves. And that's one of the cool part about being live and having this interactive place. So, well, I'm going to go to this quick sponsored break, and we will be right back. And we're back. The magic of TV. Super quick. I am going to introduce my next speaker. So I have Zakia, Dr. Zakia Mabry. I wanted to make sure I said it right. She is an author, an international speaker, independent consultant who helps businesses, colleges, universities, and communities design programs that address mental health, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So that's DEIA, in addition to social justice issues. Her expert opinion is frequently sought after by the media, federal governments, and United States military and professional organizations. Dr. Mabry is well known for initiative programs which address issues of mental health, overcoming adversity, disability inclusion, bias, inclusive leadership, intersectionality, and bystander intervention. She is a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Man, my brain is not connecting with my mouth right now. Incorporated. So without further ado, that was a mouthful, but welcome.
You did a good job, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll give you the floor.
All right. Thank you so much for having this today, Kelly. World Suicide Prevention Day is very near and dear to my heart. I appreciate you reading about some of my accolades. First, also want to apologize. I'm having a little technical difficulty today. Wasn't able to get on my computer, so I'm on my phone, but I'm making this work because this is very important to me. So you heard all those things she said about my background, my accolade, where I've worked and things of that such. But most times when I'm hearing someone speak, I'm like, what is their background? They've done this, they've done that, but what is behind all of that? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what is behind all of that today. So the topic of our discussion is, what's the lesson? There are certain dates and events that happens in one's life that is ingrained in your mind. I know for my parents' generation, it could have been when MLK was assassinated. It could have been the March on Washington. For myself, what I want to talk to you about, and I think it's a little befitting because today is the 10th of September, is 9/11, the 9/11 terrorist attacks. A little background. My parents were in the military. My father, actually. I grew up mostly overseas in Germany. We didn't move to the States until I was in 9th grade, and we moved to Southern Virginia. And I went to college, Virginia State University in Virginia. And then I decided to take a little bit of a break And during that time, my dad retired from the military and transitioned to Northern Virginia. That means like right outside the DC area, about 20 minutes. And so one morning, I just did not feel like going to work. I slept in. I turned on the news. I'm a bit of a news buff. I think I get that from my father. And I saw a plane run into the building in New York City, the towers. I called, my parents are both work for the federal government. I called my mother immediately and told her what I just saw. And was like, Mom, you need to get home immediately. Now, the condo where it sat, I can go on the balcony and I could actually see the Pentagon. Nothing happened yet. My mom was trying to get home. Then I started to try to call my dad, my brother, and my sister-in-law who were over at Fort Myer, which is a hop, skip, and a jump from the Pentagon, just because I didn't know what was happening. A little bit later, I felt the building shake. It shook. It was like a big bang. I tried to make phone calls on the house phone, cell phone, couldn't get out. All lines were out. I was terrified. I stepped in the hallway. A couple of people were in the hallway just looking around like, what is going on? And I'm not going to go through all the details, but I will say that my mother left work. Her supervisor was like, no, we can't leave. We're on lockdown right now. My mom's like, my baby, she couldn't find my brother or my niece at the time. She's like, my babies are missing. I'm leaving. They left. My mom left. My dad was in a meeting somewhere else in the DC area, and my sister-in-law was at Fort Belvoir. She's a soldier in the United States Army. By the end of the day, we were all found safe and sound and together. It was terrifying. It's a day that none of us will ever forget. And so one lesson that I learned from my father being in the military and when I was in ROTC was that we have to learn to adapt and overcome to the circumstances. Now, because of some past trauma that I had dealt with in life, this triggered me badly, the incident that happened. As those that could remember, it was on the news for months. Being in that area, I didn't have a car. I took public transportation, the metro, to get around. I was terrified to go out the house. If I saw someone who had on a hijab, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if they were there to harm me. I got back into therapy. I fast forward, I changed my major in college and I wanted to study psychology. A lot of people did things in that during that time. They either went into the military, became a firefighter, a police officer, because we felt like we wanted to give back because of this great thing that happened to our nation. So I decided when I first got my degree in psychology to be a substance abuse counselor. And so I would listen to clients' issues, and I worked with women who had addictions to various types of drugs, and they were in a program where they could bring their children with them. One particular client that I will never, ever forget, her name was Rebecca. Rebecca had 3 children. She had a mother that would come visit her on the weekends occasionally. And I was very concerned about some of the signs that she was displaying. She was becoming a little more withdrawn. She used to speak up a lot in our counseling sessions. When she had time to play with her children, she would play with them. But I can see that she was withdrawing for everyone. It was a red flag. I let my supervisors know. I let the nurse know. And they said, oh, I think she'll be okay. Maybe she does this sometimes. You're new. You have the zest for the business because you're just getting out of school. One weekend I went, I didn't work that weekend, came back in on that Monday and find out that during her pass, she had a pass where she can leave on the weekends. She went to a hotel and she decided she did not want to be here anymore. It tore me up. I went back to work. We tried to help the clients that were still there with grief counseling. But for myself, I was not feeling well. My peers used to tell me that, Zakia, when you drive to the stop sign, you're not supposed to be thinking about the clients anymore and some of their issues. And I was just thinking, well, maybe they just have fatigue because they've been in the business for so long. But I decided that that was not for me. And I resigned, and I decided to go work for the federal government at that time. During my tenure in the federal government, I want to say I started as if you know the federal grading system, the first GS job I had, I was in Germany. I was a summer hire. I worked in the chaplain's office. And this time, I think I was maybe like a GS6 or something not very high at all. But they put me in the EEO office, and I started to really like the work. And if you ask what is EEO, it's equal opportunity, where you go if you want to file a complaint because one of your rights, someone is discriminating against you based on your sex, your race, your disability, one of the Title Sevens. And so I liked it. I really enjoyed the work that I was doing. I enjoyed being a mediator, and I took a position later somewhere else in the United States. And in that role, I became the acting manager. But I used to wear heels a lot, and I was just walking through the office, going to someone else's office, and I slipped and I fell. That date I won't ever forget. Remember, I said there are certain dates and experiences that you'll remember? That was 9/5/2010. I fell, hit my head, my shoulder, and I had a concussion. I was out of work for a while. I was in the hospital for a while and banged up. And let me just say, I did not have on heels that day because I was in the report. I had actually on cowboy boots. So they weren't that high. It was just a fluke that happened. But I was really trying to get back to work because we have a report that was due, the MD 715, which goes to EOC. And if you're late, there's a lot of things that can happen. And we're a very small office. So my mom came down to help take care of me. And she was saying that I need to listen to the doctors and continue to just rest and heal and get better. But I decided that I needed to go back in the office because my team needed me. They needed me. Well, going back too soon was not the best answer. Sometimes we're going to have to listen to our mothers, right? And I had to deal with a lot of bureaucracy and just things that I was not really capable of handling at that time because I started to get migraines all the time. That's when I first was diagnosed with migraines. And I know in 2020 is when a lot of people started to work from home. Well, my doctors said that I needed to work from home then. And I got a lot of pushback from senior leaders to the point that I actually was terminated. And being terminated from a federal position, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? What am I going to do for my bills? How is my career going to pan out? And I end up moving back with my parents in Northern Virginia. I got an attorney and I filed an EO complaint myself and I won. So the termination turned into a resignation. And then my next position with the federal government was at the Pentagon. Now, this wasn't my first appointment at the Pentagon. And a lot of people think, wow, you worked at the Pentagon. Oh, that's so cool. And I want to say, it's just a building. But I want to say what was special about this particular appointment is the people that I got to work with. I worked with a gentleman by the name of Colonel John Yours. He was my supervisor, Lieutenant John Yours. And we didn't work together very long, but he was hands down the best supervisor I have ever worked with. I was a little uncomfortable with disclosing that I had several disabilities, but he was very empathetic and a great listener. So I told him he would do reasonable accommodations, allow me to work from home, my own schedule. And he oftentimes invited me to go to meetings with him that I thought, am I supposed to be here, sir? He's like, yes, I'm inviting you. And one thing that he always told me was ask questions, always ask questions. And if there's not a seat at the table, literally pull a seat up and sit at the table. Don't ever feel like you have to sit at the wall. So I had to start bringing tennis shoes to work, even though, remember, I told you I always wore heels back then, because I never knew when he would have me walking down those halls to go to a meeting. What he was doing there was grooming me to be in a room where there was opportunity, so I could have visibility and also hear some of the challenges that were going on within the realm of equity and inclusion. So I am forever very thankful for him doing that. Many of us have maybe lost a job, maybe been married, lost a family member. There's a lot of setbacks and challenges that we can go through. Traumatic experiences, health issues, just challenging situations. But one thing I want to implore is that we have to continue to push and keep going. It was mentioned earlier today that a gratitude journal is very helpful. And that's a tool that I have been using for a very long time. And yes, sometimes the victory is that you're just being able to get out of bed. So if you're going through something right now, it doesn't have to be a fancy book. You can get it from the Dollar Tree. I implore you to start with just one thing. And then maybe the week later, put down 2 things that you're grateful for. And if you're watching this live right now, I want you to put in the chat, push. Because you're not just saying push for yourself, you're saying it for someone else who may be feeling like they're at their end rope, or they're in despair, or they don't know how they're going to continue or make their mortgage or rent this month. They can continue to do it. Just keep pushing. And so there's an acronym that I came up with as we're talking about strengthening mental resilience. The first one is what we're going to talk about is P. And P is that you have to be prepared. The reason why when I talked about the 9/11 terrorist attack, that our family was able to come together because we had a plan. We had a location that my parents had already established. If anything happens, we'll go meet. So when I couldn't reach them by the phone, I went to the location to meet my parents. And that day, it was just very crazy. On 95, the interstate, all cars were going south, like both sides of the interstate. So it was total mayhem. I just had to pause and think about our plan. So that's the P. And the R is reflect. I had her reflect on what has happened in the past where I have felt so uncomfortable, felt like I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And there was a time in high school. Then I had to think about my allies. Who was there that I can lean on? There was a young lady named Marie who lived on the 4th floor, and I reached out to her because I was new to the area. I never lived in the DC area before. And she was someone who kept me grounded during the travesty. And then the Y is for yielding to your faith. I'm not going to tell you who to pray to. That's your decision. But for me, it works is to pray to my Lord and Savior, because I know whose I am and who I am. And so prayer works for me. So if you put the PRAY, it stands pray. And so that can help you remember that. And as I close, I want to close with a quote that I heard a long time ago, and it's by Ernest Hemingway. Have y'all remember Ernest Hemingway? And basically it goes to talking about that all of us are broken in the world, right? We all have things that we have gone through. The world breaks everyone, and afterwards, many are strong at the broken places. So in everything that happens in your life that seems a little challenging, when you're saying, why me? Ask yourself, what's the lesson? There's a lesson in everything. And when you share your story, it's a roadmap for someone else that is going through something. Now, I don't do coaching. A lot of coaches out there. What I do is business to business. So if your organization might need a speaker for October, which is Disability Employment Month, or November, which is Veterans, when we celebrate Veterans Day, or just a part of leadership, talking about being vulnerable and storytelling and diversity, equity, inclusion is something that you should be doing 365 days a year. So we can talk about that and figure out how to best utilize the skills so that you have an inclusive workforce. Thank you for your attention today. And Kelly, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Sakia. I am so glad we worked out the technical challenges because that was simply amazing. So thank you so much. And I know you just mentioned, but if somebody wants to find you, what is the best way to find you?
If you want to find me, you can go to my digital card, which is right there, or on LinkedIn. I'm Zakia Mabry, or on Instagram. And there's one final thought that I neglected to mention. When I was talking about all those accolades that I have, no one would guess that in high school, I had a teacher tell me that I wasn't college material because I was in special education. No one would know that I have PTSD or anxiety disorder. No one would know that I'm challenged in social settings, but it's about adapting and overcoming.
Yeah, that is amazing and such a great way to end and bring to light all of those things. So thank you so much, and definitely anyone watching this, this is where you can get all the freebies from all of our speakers, including Zakia, and thank you so much for being a speaker today.
Thank you.
Yay. Oh my gosh. I just am in awe of everybody that is speaking today. And a reminder, go download. I asked them to give you all something as you watch this special today because I knew that every single person that was going to be a speaker today just had an incredible story and things that they can absolutely share with you. If anything, I know pretty much everybody's on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook, they're on the social channels. So this will be up for lifetime. You can always come back and watch, but go grab their freebies also. And it links to a page. You literally can click on the links and get all of the goodness right there. So all right, we're just moving on. Everybody's like super on time and going good, and that is wonderful. I want to just, if you happen to be starting to watch this now, I would highly recommend going back once we are not live anymore and watching any of the speakers that you might have missed, because all of them are giving really great information, tools around resilience, around being World Suicide Prevention Day. And you never know who might need to hear this information. And that is really the whole goal behind what I wanted to accomplish. And I know that it is Sunday. A lot of people watch football. So I just want to say thank you for taking this space, this time to listen and be here. Again, we're live. We are literally live. You'll notice not about perfection, just really about getting the information out. But if you have any questions, you have anything that like pops into your head as you're listening to any of the speakers, feel free to drop it in the comments and ask your questions. Show your love to the speakers as they're speaking today. And I, without further ado, I'm going to go on to our next speaker. Let me pull up her information. So Leslie, Arboleta, I probably totally said that wrong. I'm sorry. But so she is a Kaizen coach. She's a certified quantum human design specialist and family coach, and an international speaker and author. In her coaching business, Kaizen Wellness, a name inspired by the Japanese business concept of continuous improvement, she focuses on the power of the personal narrative and helps people learn to tell the story they want to live, so they live the story they want to tell. Using a combination of movement and stillness, she guides her clients in reconnecting to their own body, brain, and breath, because when we transform your relationship with yourself, you also transform your relationship in life. When she writes and speaks, she shares her own story of transforming trauma into triumph and focuses on the practice skills of integrity and resiliency. Leslie combines her experience, education, and expertise in neuropsychology, quantum physics, and marketing to support her clients and audience members in understanding the importance of making aligned choices to create the life that brings them joy and success. She believes that each and every person is a unique, once in a lifetime cosmic event and hopes for everyone to become empowered in creating desired change and tangible results in our lives and relationships. Leslie, thank you so much for joining. You gave me a mouthful also, but it was so awesome.
You did a great job, and you pronounced my name just like my Colombian husband does, Arboleda.
Well, I'll let you take the stage.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So while I am getting my screen up, I really just want to one more time say thank you to Kelli and BCC for putting on this event. This is a very important topic, and I think we all can really use the opportunities to have those conversations more frequently. As Kelli said, sometimes people don't want to talk about these things, but this is a part of life, and one that we can approach with a bit more grace and poise when we're willing to be bold enough to have those conversations. I am not, there we go. That's what I want it to look like. So for those of you who are interested in, let me see what I'm doing wrong here. For those of you who are interested in knowing a little bit about me or don't already know who I am, this is some of the many hats I've been wearing over the last 30 years, but for the interest of time, this is the one that should be most important today. I'm a certified quantum human design specialist, and Kelli told you all the beautiful things I do. Today, I'm here to talk to you about resiliency and to ask you if maybe resiliency isn't exactly what we think it is. I'm grateful to Jody for sharing about radical curiosity and empathy, and for Gabriella for sharing about post-traumatic growth. I love that idea. And Dr. Zakaya for the PRAY way to remember how we can tap into our own resilience, and sharing her story. So, before I learned about the different personality traits that make up resiliency, I lived a story in reaction to the major traumas I'd experienced. Before I was 2, my mom divorced my dad because he was a cheating alcoholic. And I started living the story that daddies, and later all men, could not be trusted. And when I was 14, I experienced heartbreak for the first time, and I added to the story that I was living that love couldn't be trusted. And when I was 16, I was quietly raped in a house filled with my friends. And I added to the story I was living that nobody could be trusted. And when I was 21, my dad died. And I added to the story I was living that nothing, not even time, could be trusted. By the time I was 30, I was single, celibate, and certain I'd be alone and feel purposeless for the rest of my life. And then I learned a few things. And one of those things was the power to tell a different story, to start to live a different experience. Because what's also true for me is that when I was 5, my mom married the most generous of men who provided us a life of privilege, luxury, and ease. And when I was 15, I met the boy I'd later marry. And in my 20s, I was blessed to explore the globe on many grand adventures. And in my 30s, after visiting more continents than there's left to visit, I married that boy. And we have 3 amazing children together. And in my 40s, I have a thriving coaching practice that supports women, predominantly, and a few enlightened men, and remembering their natural energetic strengths to, again, tell the story they want to live in order to live the story they want to tell. One of the biggest game changers for me in learning how to rewrite my story was a better understanding of resiliency and how it manifests in me. The dictionary talks about things like quick recovery, toughness, right? Springing back to action. But all of these ideas have an inherent timeline to them, that resiliency is something that happens after a trauma. But what if it's not actually a response at all? In quantum human design, we look at resiliency as the first layer of self-understanding. And if you want to know more about those other layers, let's connect, and I would totally love to geek out on it with you. So for every element in your energetic blueprint or every personality expression, there comes a choice point, an opportunity for you to have a high frequency expression or a low frequency expression. And if you don't like some of those words like frequency, to have a joyful expression or to have a painful expression. In quantum human design, we focus on the pain points in our life that naturally come with being human because we use them as an opportunity or celebrate them almost even as cues and clues to the source of our misalignment, the place in our lives where we could make different choices to have a different experience. So when are we resilient? Predominantly, we rely on our resiliency when we're experiencing pain. But where does the pain come from? Might it originate in your focus? For this conversation, we talk about 4 different kinds of pain: anger, frustration, bitterness, and disappointment. And before we go too much farther into that, quick lesson in quantum mechanics. So for those of you who don't already know, an object can be measured either in location or in movement. Something can be someplace or it can be moving someplace, but those 2 states can't coexist at the same time. In the context of this conversation, the quantum pool from which you can pull all the possible experiences you can have in life is infinite. But the smaller pool from which we actually pull our focus is drawn from what we know. And what we know becomes the place that we focus. And for those of you who I imagine are already listening, those of you who maybe never heard of this idea, the place we focus creates our story in life. So if we're standing in the doorway of all possibilities, what's the key that opens the door? In quantum human design, we call these the 9 resiliency keys. And the reason we consider these 9 keys a necessary prerequisite for personal growth is that if any of them is not operating beneficially, it prohibits us from accessing those deeper layers of personal insight and positive change. So when resiliency is high, we have the capacity to access the higher expressions of who we are and what we're here to do. And when we're feeling resilient, we can better navigate those natural experiences of challenge and frustration or uncertainty and change that come with being human, right? Normally, if we had a little more time, we could talk a little bit about this scale, but just as I'm presenting these these topics to you, have a conversation with yourself. How do you relate with these 9 different personality traits? And let's begin. So the first one we're going to talk about is lovability. And in this conversation, we talk about lovability as how much love you believe you can receive, experience, and give. When you see yourself as lovable, you're completely open to giving and receiving love. And when you see yourself as lovable, you don't allow yourself to have experiences that don't reflect that. So we have some affirmations that can reflect our love or give us an opportunity to feel confronted by our lovability. Things like, I am lovable, or I am open to giving and receiving love, or I am deeply valuable as I am. When you say these affirmations or think them silently in your head, notice how they make you feel. Those feelings are big cues and clues to how those expressions might bring painful experiences in our lives. So if we're looking to explore the pain that comes with our own sense of lovability, we might ask, if we're bold, we might ask questions like, am I open to giving and receiving love, or what needs to be released or healed in order for me to fully allow myself to be loved? The next resiliency key we talk about is empowerment, how much control and power you feel you possess to create your life. So feeling powerful is really an expression of accessing your connection with the infinite. Whatever it is that you think animates this meat suit of yours, God, universe, source, something bigger than the electricity and magnetism that's moving these organs. Leveraging your personal power with the power of the infinite gives us access to so much more than most of us are even considering. And some of the ways that we can look at how we feel or express our empowerment come through these choice point questions. The next resiliency key to talk about is courage. How well you feel you can navigate through fear without letting it paralyze you, right? We're not going to live this human experience fearless, although that's a great goal to have. What we really can better access is living life courageously, right? Fear oftentimes keeps us from fulfilling our full potential, but limiting beliefs and feeling stuck is where most of us get hung up. And research has actually found, I think, as Jody shared with us, that joy is the natural endpoint of our aligned or perfected expression of who we are. So it's not about some external expectation of perfection. It's about understanding that the way that you do it courageously, what is right for you through empowerment and lovability, is the exact way it should be done. These are some of the choice point questions to explore courage. And the next one is decisiveness. Decisiveness is about your ability to know how to make good and right choices for you. So if you're not open to exploring new possibilities, or you're too afraid to look at the proverbial monsters under the bed, you can't fulfill your purpose in this lifetime with ease and joy. Some of the ways that we can look into that is what needs to be released or healed in order for me to make those strong choices that are right for me. The next resiliency key is emotional wisdom. Emotional wisdom is about your ability to use emotional energy as your creative power source and be deliberate, not reactive, right? Being emotional and emotionality sometimes gets a bad rap, but it's that place from which we're creating our experience as human beings. Collectively, we have a tendency to over-identify with that emotional energy sometime, and we engage in the drama and the trauma, and we use emotional energy as that impulsive springboard into bad decision making, perhaps, or maybe that's just me, right? But if we know how, and if we don't know how to integrate that emotional energy from within ourselves, or the energy that we're navigating with others in our lives, we may attempt to manage it by over-caring, right? Enabling codependency, or we may disconnect from it altogether. It's just too much. I don't want nothing to do with it, right? Sometimes we can even feel hijacked by that emotional energy. And some of the questions we can use to investigate how we're relating with our emotional energy is, what needs to be expressed, heard, understood, or released for me to have clarity in my life? The next resiliency key is self-trust. This is the degree to which you trust your inner wisdom or trust your abilities. Some of us call it our intuition, right? It's that inner voice, that guide that sometimes doesn't have words for explaining it. It's the part of being resilient is knowing how to rely on that inner wisdom within ourselves. So when we lose the capacity to trust our own awareness because it's been programmed out of us, or because we've practiced different ways of being, or perhaps it wasn't modeled for us when we were younger, we can find ourselves struggling with this particular resiliency key. Some of the choice point questions to explore your relationship with self-trust is, what needs to be released or healed for me to trust myself if I don't already? And vitality. This is one of my favorites, although I sometimes say that about all of them in different presentations. But this is about how much energy you have to do the things you want and need in life. When we're making aligned choices with our vitality, we're not feeling misaligned. We're not living misaligned. We're not saying yes when we mean no, and no when we mean yes. We're not experiencing the burnout that can come with misused vitality is the word I'm going to say. These are some of the choice point questions that come with that exploration. And our next one is authenticity. It goes hand in hand with that vitality. So authenticity is about how free you feel to express your authentic self fully. We all have within us a destiny, an authentic way of being who we are, if you don't like that word. You are each a once-in-a-lifetime unique cosmic event. And hiding out and not speaking the truth of who you are takes a toll on yourself energetically. Some of the questions we can use to explore our authenticity are, how am I fully expressing my greatness? And then we get to self-worth, self-esteem, and your sense of value. So this is different than lovability and worthy to note. Self-worth is about recognizing the value of who you are, independent of anything you do or be. Just by being who you are, you have a value and a worth. Lovability is about understanding that you're lovable because of who you are. Self-worth is about understanding that you bring value to the evolution of the collective just by being. And when you're not standing in your value, when you're making choices that don't put you in alignment to receive your abundance, you're missing out on all those beautiful opportunities that are waiting to receive you. Some of the questions that we can ask ourselves about self-worth is, how do I fully proclaim my preciousness? So if you found yourself in this conversation thinking about that rating scale or how you rated yourself on these different resiliency keys, notice the places where you have a higher rating in those scales, the places where you feel like this experience brings you less joy and more pain. Those are the places to start exploring how to shore up your resiliency. Resiliency isn't some skill that's reserved for a select few victims turned hero. Resiliency is something that every single one of us have access to. And if you're interested in going a little further, or you find some of those higher ratings, some of the different questions we can ask to go a little further, is it okay for me to heal? Is it safe for me to heal? Am I able to heal this, and do I deserve to heal this? Do I believe I can heal this? And am I willing to heal this? These are bold questions that are great for those journal practices that were talked about earlier in the evening. They're also great conversation points with bold people in your life that you're willing to have these conversations with, people like Kelli, right? So if any of you are interested in rewriting your story, I would love to connect more. And remember that this is ultimately about embracing this human experience that comes with the anger, frustration, bitterness, and disappointment at different choice points in our lives, and transforming that painful experience into a joyful one by rewriting our story. And I know I've said a lot in this 20 minutes, but if you remember nothing other than this, remember, you are a unique, once in a lifetime cosmic event. And you're here to be healthy, joyful, and abundant. Thank you so much for your time. If you're interested in learning more about quantum human design, you can access the website here. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about me or connecting and geeking out on all kinds of personal growth, I always love those conversations. This is all of my details. The QR code on the left will get you a copy of the slides if you decided that now you'd like to have a little more detail. And a QR code on the right will take you straight to my calendar if you want to schedule a courtesy discovery call and see if working together is a great choice for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie.
So much, Kelli. This was awesome.
Like, I will pop this up just so that if anybody wants to go to your website, they can find you there. I love that you added the QR codes. I'm like obsessed with QR codes now. So that was so amazing. And just the way that you share how to reframe, instead of looking at pain, you can rewrite your story. I think that's just so amazing. So thank you so much for being a speaker today, and go connect with all of our speakers, including Leslie. This is her website. But don't forget that there are a whole bunch of freebies from all of our speakers. So thank you so much, Leslie. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kelli.
Yay. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you, but I am learning a lot. I love hearing different perspectives and really understanding resiliency, and how even on this day, which is World Suicide Prevention Day, how we can take action and become more resilient. We also have those stories to share. We can rewrite our story. There's lots of freebies that come with our speakers today. And one thing, So World Suicide Prevention Day is always on September 10th. And yes, it happens to be the day right before 9/11. So I thought that was really cool how Zakira tied in the 9/11 in there. And for whatever reason, for me, I don't think about it till it's like the next day, right? And that may happen for you also. But World Suicide Prevention Day is always on the 10th of September. And this year, the theme is actually creating hope through action. So I really hope that you take this information, go take action, download the freebies, also absorb all the information that all of our speakers are giving to you, and reach out to them to be able to share in this experience. So I'm going to go into our last speaker, and he may be familiar if you've been watching my show. He was on my show not too long ago. So William Hartwick, he is a retired principal and teacher from Northern California. He actually is currently residing in Colorado. He is an author and motivational speaker. He's the author of the book named The Invisible Backpack, which is a rhythmical story of his life journey. Excuse me. He lives with Tourette's syndrome and bipolar disorder, and has again been a guest on the Make Mental Health Matter show in the past. William, thank
Hey,
you for
Kelli.
joining. Yay.
Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, I will let you take the stage.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everybody. She said, my name is William Hartwick. I'm trying to get the camera adjusted here. And I do live with Tourette's and bipolar disorder. And please don't run. It's not that bad. Tonight, I'm going to share with you a story. Living with Tourette's, I write in rhyme. My book is in rhyme. I just finished a screenplay in rhyme called Normal, Basic, and Average, Not. I guess the whole idea is before I hurt myself, I decided to express myself. And so tonight's about self-love. And I want to start with trauma, which is the beginning of my book. And then we're going to end with Tourette's, metaphorically correct. But I'm going to tell you a journey tonight and what self-love means to me. Trauma. It happened at birth, a coma for me. For others, I'm not sure. The fact of the matter is, there is no cure. It comes in many avenues, from physical to the mind. There's no defining it. There is no particular kind. Some have it for a lifetime, some right away. If you don't deal with it, forever will it stay. Exposure to so many has really made me ache. Accepting my own trauma has really made me wake. The pain was deeper than I ever thought it could be. As I open my heart to others, they can clearly see how much I was hurting over the recent tragic loss, not only losing my wife and family, but dealing with a horrible boss. What I'm realizing is I'm not alone. Come together with complete strangers and see how they've grown. It gives me inspiration way beyond belief. Never did I imagine there could be so much relief. I thought I was alone, suffering and saw the pain, thinking I was crazy, literally going insane. Listening to their stories as they share their lives with me has surely made me realize I can clearly see. The trauma is a creature that comes in many ways. I'm grateful for this experience, and I cherish all my days. As I wake each morning wondering what the day will bring, and I listen to the birds outside my window sing, I can't hope and think that each day brings a smile to everyone that's on earth for only a little while. I pray to God each night as I lay down my head to rest that all trauma lives will turn out the best. My trauma is forever, but my heart is now stronger, for human bond and love of life will last even longer. July 13th, 2018, Life Healing Center, Santa Fe, New Mexico, when I checked myself in to find, what was going on with me. Why did I want to hurt myself? Why was I going through this pain of suffering life? And it came to get to the point of self-love. It got to the point of saying to myself that, labels are labels. We have a condition of Tourette's or bipolar, or we're too heavy, or we eat too much, or we smoke too much, or we drink too much, or whatever that label is. Tonight we're going to talk about not judging people and what self-love is. And so just recently I moved to Colorado and became a member of the National Speakers Association, the Colorado chapter. You all rock. Thank you so much for allowing me in to be part of this organization and share a story different than anybody else, because I share and rhyme. I do it a way that's not only captivating, but it's concise and it's accurate the way I can do it. You know, going through school is tough. You know, I was functionally illiterate in many ways. A few speakers earlier, yeah, I was in the mentally retarded classroom, at least they tried to, but I spoke out and I tried it differently. So self-love. I was in Castle Rock about 5 weeks ago when I arrived here, and a friend of mine and I were talking one night about self-love, and he was talking about being age 30 when he found this experience. And I wrote this the next day. It's called What's Your Number? If love truly is the answer and self-love's the key, what's your number? Mine was 53. It's never too late to love yourself for who you are inside. People will judge you if they want to. No reason to ever hide. For once you experience the love I found in who you want to be, you'll have the opportunity to set yourself free. Being trapped in one's head is never a pleasant place. Speaking from your heart can be seen upon your face. Remember, you die once. You live every day. Find your self-love and start a new way. Today is an opportunity to give yourself a break. Love is the answer. It's time for you to wake. You know, we go through life and we have these experiences, and it's suicide prevention. And my book's dedicated to Robin Williams. I met Robin when I was 16 years old in Northern California. My high school, remember that earlier, I'm from a town of 8,000, so a very small town, but we were in the North Coast sections of California. And I wasn't playing. The team was phenomenal, but we won that night. And later we're in a restaurant in Marin. I looked across the way and there was Robin Williams. So I went over and I met the man. I shook his hand, and I was being me, comical. I was class clown, and so he's called me funny man. So it took me a while to understand, you know, what he had gone through. I carry a lot of things with me. One of the things I keep with me is the Robin Williams Time magazine, probably the best article ever written about a human being, and factual. And we all love the man, and he did so much for all of us in many ways. So I got to write to him one called Funny Man, and I want to share that with you right now, if I may. Laughter is an amazing way of releasing pain and sorrow. Robin, you bless me with today and tomorrow. To hear the laughter of each individual as the joke is told, belly chuckle to tears of joy, you have broke the mold. Freedom to express yourself with no script at all till the production is complete and the final curtain call has inspired me to let it out and be myself with pride. Look out, world, we're going on another ride. The black heart that took you way too soon has inspired me to reach for the moon. Today I get out of bed with a heart full of joy. No more pain and suffering, Robin. Back to a joyful little boy. You know, thanks for what you do for us. And I think tonight I've been inspired by the ladies in front of us with a story. We all have one. And, you know, living with a condition of Tourette's and bipolar, sometimes you walk in a room, everyone walks away. But it's about acceptance. You know, I live with acceptance, patience, tolerance, and love with grace, and something new every day. I was reading some statistics. I don't want to get into data too much tonight, but doctors say the silent killer is high blood pressure. I'm going to disagree with all of you. It's depression. You know, we don't get to see it. It's in our mind. It's in our eyes, but sometimes we don't listen. Sometimes we don't have the two ears and one mouth. We don't use them in direct proportion. And listen to what's being told to you and how people are actually feeling. You know, a couple of ladies referred that tonight about listening to people's feelings and how they really feel. I tell a joke, what do you call a dog with no legs? It doesn't matter, it's not coming. And it's not meant to be funny, it's the truth. We say things to people that we don't understand, or we just don't listen to how they really feel. You know, the number 2 cause of death in ages 10 through 30 is suicide. And it's the number 1 cause of death right now in the military in the 21st century. You know, we have to start listening. We've got to pay attention to what's happening around us and stop ignoring people's feelings. Sigmund Freud was interviewed right before he passed away. He was 86 years old. He was coming out of a restaurant. A young man came up to him and said, "Are you Sigmund Freud?" "Yes, I am." He says, "Well, can I ask you a question?" He says, "Ask me whatever you want, young man." He says, "What's your answer? Where did you get your philosophy?" He says, "Love and hard work." And I have to agree, you know, when we find love, you know, it's really the answer. My second book coming out is titled Mental Health, Mental Hell, Mental Help. You decide. And the last entry is called Love's the Answer. And, so that's kind of how I look at tonight. I look as an opportunity to share a story. Mine's no different. It's just done differently. And so I want to introduce myself a little bit different than maybe Kelly did or I said it. I wrote one called Author William L. Why Me? Have Tourette syndrome and bipolar disorder. Yes, blessed with them both. And once I was even arrested under oath. One is neurological, no one can explain. The other is caused by the unnecessary pain. Normal, basic, and average, those are words of dismay. I'm here to share with you there is another way. No need to judge another for how they make you feel. Take a look in the mirror and see what is real. Love is truly the answer. Thank you, God above. Even Sigmund Freud said hard work and love. As we open up our backpacks and we take one thing out, you can crawl back in if you have a doubt. Life is not easy, no manual given at birth, yet 8 billion humans exist together on Earth. There is no one like you, and there's no one like me. Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you will see. The God up above has never let us down. It's time to hold hands again, my friend, in each and every town. And, you know, we went through the COVID thing. I wrote one called Pandemic versus Scamdemic. We can all go there, but we have to go beyond that. You know, we have to get to the point of finding what is the answer. You know, medication has been prescribed to me, 80,000 pills for Tourette's. How are you going to take a neurological and give it a chemical we don't know what's going to happen? So I think that as we continue to talk and we continue to listen, we'll find that love really is a very important part of our message. Part of my message is on judgment. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and then I'm going to read Tourette's to you, which is in the book, and it's metaphorically correct. So if you have ears that can't hear a foul word or two, you may want to hit mute in a minute. But often I go into places and I'm usually approached, what are you on? Kind of some shit, you know, all those types of things. And one of the greatest stories I had about being approached and judged and not responding was in Jacksonville, Oregon. I was at a pub and a gentleman across the way said, "Hey, Glenn Fry, come here." I said, "Well, Glenn's dead, but here we go." And he started asking me if he could have some drugs. And I said, "Well, I have Tourette's. Do you want some?" He looks at me and I say, "What was your career? What did you do?" He goes, "Well, I was a Major League Baseball player." I said, "Wow, man." We start talking. He played about the time Bonds played, and we had a conversation, Babe Ruth series, Lone Parade earthquake, all that. And I asked the man, I said, "How many home runs you hit?" He said, "I hit 16. I said, "Wow. How many did you hit before you stepped up to the plate?" He goes, "9. I said, "Then quit judging people." And I gave him this Tourette's. And the man went from elevated to his first maybe tears of his life. And here's what I said to him, and what I respond to many people that judge those of us who may be different. It's called Tourette's. "Hey, Darren and Marcy, I finally found out I have Tourette's. Holy shit." We even called them all little son of a bitches and get away with it. And Tau Kappa Epsilon, my fraternal nickname was Twitch. A term of endearment, a nickname I'll never ditch. I lived 35 years of my life always wondering why I go from complete laughter to a sudden tearful cry. Teased my entire childhood, mainly by those we trust. Adults were the worst of all. High school was a bust. I was called a son of a bitch by Dale Thomas and literally kicked out of class. And Coach Ninehouse, I can't hang you on the bus. Well, you're a ass. The label given to me has long been misread, even who had the gift have been misled. Medication was prescribed. What a fiasco that became. It's not okay for medical professionals to cause us to go insane. If I have the only neurological disorder known to prescribing drugs, hey, sorry, Dr. Naris loves the answer. How about prescribing hugs? I want some of you on. Got some shit? I have Tourette's. You want some of it? The final straw came when I was arrested and thrown in jail. DUI, other than alcohol, you try and make bail. Before you judge of us who suffer from the pain, think to yourself, what do I have to gain? We all have a disability. Take a look in the mirror. Can I walk on water or do I simply have a fear? How to accept others no matter the twitch, the glasses, or the creed. Thank God for those who understand why I chose to smoke weed. May have been the only true relief I had other than love. Footprints in the sand, my friends. Thank you, God above. So often people walk away or simply want to ignore. Maybe Tourette's will go away when I don't deal with him anymore. Do y'all have this gift, the one that makes me me? Don't let them put you in a box. Let them be free. I'm proud of my life each and every day. And of course, there's times I think make it go away. So when you're passing judgment and you're choosing to discriminate, you're now one of them. You're causing the hate. And the very end of it says, July 22nd, 2019, the beginning, born February 8th, 1965. And that's how I concluded the book. The reason I'm sharing my work with you and the reason I'm sharing this is it healed me. The only relief I've really had is writing. You know, this invisible backpack is mine for me. And the help is that find yours, you know, and no matter what it is, I love the kitchen. It's my therapist. I often talk about how hot she is because it's the stove. And all the things that are important tonight are mostly about how you feel about you. You know, who are you? You're one of a kind. You're brilliant, you're beautiful, you're loving. Be that to yourself and be that for others. So I like to end with jokes and all about perspective. I was class clown in high school. And I'm going to tell you a perspective joke, and then I'm going to turn it back to Kelly and say thank you for the time. I also want to thank the ladies for letting me be part of this night. It's an honor. It's my first opportunity to do such a thing. And so here's a little humor. So Jesus, Noah, and Moses are playing golf. And the first hole's a par 3, and there's a little water hole in front. And this little man walks up and says, hey, you guys mind if I play along? And oh, sure, come on. So Moses spins a tee and lands on Noah, and then Moses, then Jesus, and then this little man. So Noah gets up there, and it's awkward swing, of course, Noah, and it's going for the water. A little arc appears, and he takes the ball up on the green. The little man's watching this, okay. So it's Moses' turn, of course. Moses got a nice swing. It's going perfect, but the water parts and the ball goes up on the green. So next. So Jesus gets up, and it's perfect. Absolute perfect swing. But it's going for the water, and it skips across up on the green. He turns, your turn. This little man gets up there, just an awful swing. He slices it way out in the woods. The squirrel picks up the balls, run across the fairway. An eagle swoops down, picks up the squirrel, flies across the green, drops the ball off, and goes in the hole. And Jesus turns around and says, come on, Dad, just play golf. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all you. Kelly, it's back to you, hon.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, William. I love when you share all of your poems and your humor, and I'm glad that you did the I am William. I debated if I was going to say that intro or the one that I did. So I'm glad it had much more impact by you saying it. So I'm glad that I left that to you.
Well, Kelly, I'm going to reach out to you for a second and say thank you for what you're doing. You know, it takes a very strong person to get up every week and talk about a loss. But you've given me a mindset I'm going to offer everyone. Talk about the game. We're not talking about loss anymore. It's about gain. You know, like I said earlier, you know, we die once, we live every day. Gain the experience, gain the people around you that are important, and then go forward. It's no sense of holding back anymore. So thank you for what you do and your network. And I look forward to tomorrow night and hopefully joining your team. So thank you for everything.
Yeah. Well, here is the way that you can reach out to William. And his freebie is he'll give you a copy of his book that you can read. Well, the manifesto. So make sure you go and get the freebie, but this is the way that you can reach out to William. And yes, thank you so much. I loved when
Just
you
put in the if you email me tonight, you put in the title of the thing or a little caption. I'll send you electronic version of the book. It's in redo right now. So if you want to read it in the next day or two, send it. I'll respond tonight and send it out to you my gift. Thank you for showing the interest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, William. I appreciate you again. All right. Oh my gosh. I am just blown away. And I think every single time I have guests on my show, or again, this is the first summit or special that I have done on E360 TV, and I am just blown away. I knew the moment when I started getting applications that it was going to be something amazing, and it turned out to be. So make sure if you're watching this again, go to this link and grab those downloads, those freebies that all of the speakers are giving to you as the gift for being here. Again, we're creating this hope through action. Take that action of going and connecting with the speakers. Also, keep in mind it is World Suicide Prevention Day. What does that mean? It means to connect with people. Let's use our noticing skills to see what other people are going through, what they're experiencing. As many of our speakers talked about, is this self-love, this understanding of others, not judging, and really redesigning your story. How can we be more empathetic? How can we really take our stories and show people that we are being inclusive of others, including ourselves? We have to remember that we in ourselves, we are important, and whatever we may be experiencing may be really challenging, and it can be really, really hard. But there are a lot of people in this world that really, truly want to help you, including myself and all the team that I have at BCC Evolution. If you're in need of more resources, please go to bccevolution.org. We actually have a trusted resource hub that we are building. And I am going to more than likely going to bring every single speaker that was on here today back onto my show. So make sure that you also check out the Make Mental Health Matter show on the Achieve TV channel, which is right here on E360 TV. On Mondays, I go live at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. On Wednesdays, I go live at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And it is just an amazing way to be able to share resources, information, people's stories, and give back to the community in general. I know that I started out telling you my story about the loss of my sister, and yes, it is something that I talk about always. So it is maybe a little fraction easier for me to share that information. But keep in mind that grief and loss and the journey when you lose somebody to suicide can be, I call it a roller coaster. It really is. It has its highs, it has its lows. I have those days that I can wake up and talk till I'm blue in the face. And then I have those days that all I want to do is sit on that floor and not do life during that day. It is a journey that we often, as survivors of suicide loss, go through. So utilize your noticing skills, ask the hard questions when you notice somebody might be struggling. And I'm going to give you two sentences that you can say to people. And if you happen to, if this is the first time watching, you maybe didn't, but my very last Make Mental Health Matter show, I gave these examples too, but I'm going to give you them here also. And 2 questions that you can ask somebody if you feel like they are experiencing suicidal thoughts and or in a place that they may be contemplating suicide. And those are you thinking about suicide? And are you thinking about killing yourself? They sound really scary to say, and they are, but the brain loves clarity. So make sure you use the word suicide or killing so that they clarify in their brain, is this really truly what I'm looking to do? And you never know, those simple phrases could save a life. And if you want more information at any point in time, again, reach out to BCC Evolution, reach out to myself. I would be more than happy to connect you to any of the speakers that we had today, but you can go connect yourself with them also. That's not the right link, but this is the right link. You can go connect yourself with any of them by downloading their free and or reaching out to them, because a lot of them have their emails, their phone numbers. I mean, that's how giving the community that I've really tried to create is. So thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, it will live on E360 TV. It will live on Facebook and YouTube. You can go back and watch. No matter what you do, I hope that you have an amazing night, and come check out my show, Make Mental Health Matter, on E360 TV on the Achieve TV channel, whether it's on Mondays or Wednesdays. And I will be so thankful to have you there. So thank you so much. And I will see you next time, because we are going to do another summit, hopefully every single quarter. That is my goal. So I'll see you back here. Have a great night.